Hello everybody, it's Larry, and in this video we're going to be doing part two of our four-part series to do Harold Kennedy's tree. We're going to start with the clustering, build a tree, then we're going to do sourcing, verification, and triangulation in order to verify all of our information. So in part one we did the clustering to cluster out the lines. Now the comment that I got pretty often was, there's a lot of high centimorgan DNA matches, and this is a lot because he's older. The older a person is, the closer they're going to be to those connections. So, his daughter, my wife, or, my daughter would be further away or perhaps not even match some of these people that we see right here. So even though this shows as a 300, my wife may be 150, my daughter might not match at all. So it really kind of depends on where you are. So if you have parents, that haven't tested, or grandparents, I would take action and get that done, because you're going to get higher matches, because the centimorgans divides in two, every time you go down a node. So like my grandparents, to my parents 3400, to my grandparents 1700. But it's at reverse as you're getting close to somebody. So let's say that I've got a second cousin, and they're matching me at 250. Well, in that case, my parents going to match them right here, like at 500. And my grandparent, if they're in that line, are going to match them closer to the 1,000 mark. And so the closer you can get to that person, relationship wise, the higher the centimorgans are going to be. So the older the person can test in your family, the better off you are. So with Harold, being in the upper 70s, he's going to have a lot of higher matches than what I would have, or a lot of you would have, or maybe some below. So that being said, I felt that it was fairest to continue with part two with his information, since that's kind of what we were using as the example. But once we finish this series, I do plan to have some follow-up videos talking about what happens if you don't know your parents, because in his case, he knows his parents and he knew his grandparents, and so he started with that tree, and so he gets common ancestors. All right. Now, I eliminated his tree, but since my tree has it, he still gets common ancestor hints. So with that, you may not be getting this common ancestor hint, and you may be having centimorgans that are much lower. Kind of like my uncle. If we come over here to him, my uncle Basie, remember I was a Basie for 30 years. He's got a 350, a 250, 100, 103, 95, got 4 in the 60s, and then all the rest of them are 50s and under. Now he's got 52,900 matches, and 52,800 or 52,900 of them are 50 centimorgans and under. So we'll come back and we'll do the same process for my uncle. But for right now, we're going to finish with the Harold Kennedy. And in doing so, today we're going to have a little gem in the middle of this when we're going to make a tree, and we're just going to kind of start it from scratch with Harold in this. But when we do, I'm going to show you a little gem that may be just what you need to get past and get a hint further away. When you're not getting hints, it might be able to give you some hints on that. So with this, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to open these in a new tab. But again, we've got pages and pages and pages of these, and look, this is a locked tree. This doesn't have a tree. This is an unlinked tree. These really are not useful to us, okay? Even though good centimorgan matches, they're great for triangulation, they do nothing for us right now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a filter. We don't want the privately linked trees, because we could make messages to them, and who knows, we may not get a reply back until we finish buying our Christmas gifts. Or it could be you could be opening gifts at New Year's or something by the time you get a response from that. So we don't care about that. And the unlinked trees, you click on that and they may have several trees and you don't know which tree is yours. So we're just going to skip that, because those are distractions. We want to really get to the part that we care about. And then right here, we're going to pick one of our lines. We spent the time in the clustering to develop. Here's 4 lines that handled most of our centimorgans to 90 centimorgans. So let's take advantage of that. So we're going to look at the Kennedy Drake. Now, we're going to skip my wife and my daughters, and we're going to right click and we're going to say open in new tab. Every one of these that have a tree, okay, that are above that are above, that we've already done it to the 90 centimorgans, but in essence, we're opening them all above 90 centimorgans. So we're going to open every one of these in a new tab. And so there's going to be lots of tabs open. Okay, we're going to open all of these in new tabs. We've got just a few more to go here. We're down to the one that says 7. We got 2 more to go. Right there, click and click. So now you can see we've got all these tabs up here. Now some of them only have 6, 4. I could have skipped those, to be honest with you, because even without going to those, I know they're not going to be of a help. I mean, they might, so I went ahead and opened them, because who knows, they might just perfectly lay into what we want. Now, for the purpose of Harold, he knows his parents. His parents were Bryant Kennedy, Phyllis Redding, and he knows his grandparents. But he doesn't know all of his grandparents or where they lived or any of their information. He just knows their name. So we're going to look here. And in the first one, because he has that tree, it's giving us a relationship hint of father and mother. All right. So we know his father's Bryant and his mother's Phyllis Redding. And we knew from the very first one we did, on the lines right here, we have a Redding line that was on his mother's line. Okay. So, we've already distinguished that we have that broken out in our clustering, but we're going to look at this. Again, there's 15 million people in the Ancestry database, and everybody has, different results. So there's not going to be a way to make one video that fits everybody. And that's why we're going to do the follow-up, afterwards. But in this, there are certain things that we can do to just kind of, look at to see where we should be focusing our attention. So if we didn't know about this Bryant Kennedy, we know that his name's Harold Kennedy, so we take an interest in the Kennedy name, starting with Bryant. So we got Bryant and Phyllis, Carter, unknown, Ira, and Olga. Okay, so we're going to go here, and we got another Bryant. Oh, that's the same. Is that the same one? Oh, it is. I got it open twice for some reason. All right, so here's the next one. And again, we've got a Bryant and Phyllis, and we got Carter. Instead of an open one, we've got RV and Ira and Olga. So we've got Bryant, Carter, RV, Phyllis, Ira, Olga. And so we saw that pattern with the other person. And when you get 2 like that, I like to see it 3 times. And looky here, we got a third one that says Carter, RV, but we've got a different one right here. So we know that this Carter and RV, we're related to 3 different people. Okay, 3 different people are related to us through Carter, RV. So we would build our tree starting right here, Carter and Carter, RV. Okay, and so we know we can build here. So what do we have here? We got Carter and RV here. So we can build a Carter and RV. Now to start building with Carter and RV, we're going to click on the name underneath it, because it's going to show us their tree. And I picked this one because I knew it was a big tree. But, if you're not, you would be clicking on all the others. And they have this tree to varying degrees. Some only come to here, some come down here, some go up this way, and a couple here. But, they all have it to a variety of levels. But in here, you can see, the different names there. So Carter with his parents, Charles, Anna, John, Sarah. So you've got this tree out pretty good for Carter and RV. Okay, and there's the Drake line. Remember, we have the Drake as one of our lineages we define. So we're really only missing 1 here, 2 here, 2 here, 1 here. So not very much is missing. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to have it out from that point. So now let's look at Carter in this tree. And so here's the Bryant. So we got the Bryant, Delbert, Letha, and Clifton underneath here. So we've got a pretty good tree, and we know that there's Bryant there under Carter. What I meant to do was this, view his family tree. So if we were to start with Carter, wife, RV, and all the kids, all right, we'd start with that node. And then if we did RVs and up, we would get this node. And notice it's going a little further than it did before on some of the lines. So we would, enter all of this manually into our tree. Okay. So, and we come through and we see the Drakes, Drake lines. There's, the one that didn't help. But we already got our hints for the Drake because we got this wonderful treasure trove back over here. We got the Drakes. We got RV. We got William and Dorothy, John Beverly Drake, William Drake. And so, when we get these other Drakes, William Henry Drake, we've already got these from that other treasure trove. Okay, so this was a great tree we stumbled into, and you're going to come across that to varying degrees. It may only be a couple, may not be a couple. The main thing is when you're looking, look for commonalities. So you're looking in here, obviously you're looking for this name first, but if you're reading these names, what I do is I read the last names aloud in these two columns, and then I come to the next one and I read the names aloud in those two columns, and then I'd say, oh, look, I got a Kennedy again, and then I'd look at those lines like Carter, Arvie, Ira, Olga, and I'd go back over here and I go Carter, Ira, Olga. Okay, so we got some commonality there. And you're looking for that Carter, Arvie, and it got, instead of Ira, Olga, it's Thomas, Cordelia, because a different child. Okay, so that tells us, Clifton's over there. So that's a way to begin your tree. Okay, it just gives you a starting point. Now, from that, you're going to do that. We don't need to do the Drake because we've already done that. You're going to do it again with the Reddings. And so what you'll need to do here, so as not to get confused, close these out. All right. And we're going to do the same thing now with the Redding side. And you're going to, just open each one of these in a new tab. And I am going to, get some of the bigger ones here, save a little time. And here we go. So we're going to come over here. Well, that's one we saw before. We saw that one before. And so, again, because we saw them before, we already know how it's going to play out. So Bryant Kennedy, Phyllis Redding, we got Ira Worth and Olga Caldwell. And then, so Bryant Kennedy, Phyllis, Ira, Olga. I don't know if they go further with Ira and Olga. We'll find out. Bryant, Ira. Yeah, they went to James Madison. Okay. And then Olga Caldwell. Caldwell's went out quite a bit. Okay, so that's a handy one. And let's see, James F. Redding, Sarah Louisa Redding. So let's look at this, James F. Redding. What do we got? A James M. I think we saw James M. over here. James M. 1859, 1920. And this is James M. right here. Let's click on this one. 1859 to 1955. Where was that other one? To 1920. Oh, it says about 1920. So that one's just an after. So James Madison Redding, born August 16th, 1859 in Georgia. And over here we have James Madison Redding, August 16th, 1859, Georgia. And then this one has the exact death date. So these are the same people. So now, we've tied these trees kind of together. And again, I'm not, typing them in because I don't want to waste your time with watching me type. But you see how you can look and find, there's the James F. with Sarah Fox we have. So that's how you would get to the Redding line. And you do the same with the Caldwell Jolly, and I won't bore you with all that one. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an example of the tree. And I told you I was going to show you something that was pretty interesting. So we're going to start a new tree, and we're going to start it for Harold. So we're going to go Harold Kennedy. And he is a male, and he is living, and we're going to click it like that. Now remember, we said that we knew his father and his mother. Now, it takes two names to start a tree. If you didn't know that, if you've already done this a few times, you may or may not know. So Bryant would be a male, and we're going to mark him as living for right now. And right here, because this is a working tree, a working dirty tree for Kennedy. All right, so now we've got a working dirty tree, and we've named it. And we know that the mother was Phyllis Redding. So we're going to go Phyllis Redding, and female. All right, we're going to do that. Now, look here. So we've started this tree, and we would be building it from the information that we found before, because remember, we found some really good information on Bryant's parents. So maybe Harold only knew his father, but because the other trees had Bryant, it was able to extenuate it, and he only knew his father and mother. Now, the only way you're going to have less than that is if it's an adoptive situation or, an NPE where you don't know a family member. But generally that's there. But notice there's no hints for Bryant, and right here it says there's some ancestry hints, but we're not getting anything coming in here. This is one of those gems that I came across, and I see it in trees all the time. You know, you see people out in the 1800s that says living because they haven't put the death. And you saw that one that says death after or about, 1920. It's better to have an after date than to have nothing. And you've got to have them deceased. And I'll show you why. Let's go back. See, when we clicked on this, see it says living right here. All right, watch what happens when we change this to deceased, because his parents have passed. So we're going to come in and we're going to do the same thing for Bryant. We're going to do here, we're going to mark them both deceased. And we get hints now. If I was to take this off and take the living, okay, mark it back living, that goes away. Now, because we marked him deceased, he's starting to get a hint now. Now, if you do this enough times back and forth, it will end up messing it up. But you can see there, if you turn it off and on, that you start getting potential father and mother hints. And since we had that tree information, this can be a faster way of entering that information. We know it was Ira Worth Redding, so I can click yes. And we know that he was married to, Olga Pearl Caldwell. So we come here, and Olga Pearl, nicknamed Dolly Caldwell. And so if we have those others, and we've copied them maybe with the snipping tool or something, and see, we're getting all these hints over here. Now, I mentioned the snipping tool, and this is where I use it. Look right here when you see a potential mother and there's not a father. I don't know why that is specifically. Now, I expect is we have James Madison, Matt Redding, they have as the husband. And the other tree had James Madison Redding and didn't have the nickname Matt. Or the dates might be different. And because of that, the artificial intelligence in Ancestry did not identify the husband as being the same husband for Sarah, nicknamed Sally, Ellen Minton, because people put the nicknames in there and the quotes and some don't. So because it brought this one in. So what you do is you take your clipping tool and you would start up here at the top right and drag it over here, and that copies it for you. Or, if you're really good with your cell phone, you can just hold it up and snap the picture of it real quick. And then once you do it, to enter James Madison Redding for the spouse. Because sometimes they'll pull that in after that. A lot of times it doesn't. So we're going to come here. We're going to enter that as James Madison Redding. And make sure it says deceased. You don't have to put the deceased dates, but make sure it's marked as deceased. And in doing so, after a while, you may get the hints to pop in here. So you can fill it up here. Same thing with Bryant Kennedy. Bryant Kennedy, Arvor Caledonia Drake, and the father was Carter Waterman Kennedy. So we're going to want to make note of that. And then we're going to come up and we're going to enter Carter Waterman Kennedy. Carter Waterman Kennedy. Okay, so now we've entered that, and you notice that it popped in the hints now for RV, and it may for James. Now, if we wanted to get a little bit better on that, when we took note for the RV, I'll give you an example. So when we review the details, if you get the birth and death years of the spouse and put those in, a lot of times that will trigger it to give a hint when otherwise it wouldn't. So you can see this is a little faster way of entering that information that's out there. And again, this is because it's made matches to trees out there. But when you do that, it brings in the pictures and it brings in the sourcing here. So if we look at this profile now, we get this information is coming in, profile image, and all this will come into your tree. And we've got the Ira Worth Redding, we get the stuff brought in. So it helps because it brings in the dates, brings in places, Tarrant County, Carter County, Oklahoma. And so you don't have to manually type all that in. So it is much, much faster to do it this way. So if I go back to the tree view by clicking there, and I want to enter as much of it this way as I can. I know the hints are not accurate, they may be accurate, they may not be accurate. We don't know at this time. And so the purpose of this is to get the paint on the canvas before we start doing the sourcing and triangulation. We want to build this out, build it out about 4 or 5 generations if we can, or as far out as we can. And at this point, we're not concerned so much about the accuracy. The accuracy will come down the road, especially when we do the sourcing and the triangulation. So don't be concerned about that right now. The main thing is let's get some paint on the canvas and get going. just a quick analogy. This is kind of like, let's say that you're a pilot and you're in New York and you're at the airport on the tarmac, and they've given you an organ for an organ donation, and it's valid for 4 hours. And you can wait, and they're going to give you instructions on where to go. It's going to be somewhere inside the United States. You don't know where. And so you can sit there for 2 hours, and then, they say, okay, it needs to be delivered to, say, Dallas. Well, that's great. Hour and a half to Dallas, and that's great. Well, what if they tell you San Francisco? That's a 3-hour journey. And so if you're in New York, you're not going to be able to make that. Well, the best thing to do is to get going, get off the ground, get something out there. Fly, get over in middle America where you're an hour and a half to any location. Get out there over Nebraska, and then they're going to tell you, hey, go to San Francisco. So your through lines were correct. You were heading right straight to San Francisco anyway. Great job. But maybe you're having to land in Dallas. Well, that's, just 30 minutes south. So you're way ahead of time, or Minnesota, or maybe you have to go down to Florida. You don't know. You could be going anywhere. But if you take off and you get going, you're going to get there a whole lot faster. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're clustering so that we can delineate our lines. We're getting our tree. We want to get it out there and build it with the information we have. So if he knows his parents and grandparents, we put that out there, and we're going to see what hints it gives us, and then flesh it out. If we don't have that, then we'll get that in the sourcing. But we try to take what it gives us, and if Through Lines has given us some information, let's add that for now and build us a working dirty tree and get it out there, 4 generations or 5 if we can. And then we'll iron it out in the sourcing and in the triangulation. And when it's done, it's going to be accurate. There will be no question about accuracy. I will say this comes with a big warning. When we start getting into part 3, you're going to find out some accuracy issues. But when we get to part 4 and we do the triangulation, I do want to warn you, you're going to come across things, some of you are, you're going to find some hidden things that maybe you would have wished you hadn't. Your tree is going to be accurate, though. I will tell you that. We're making an accurate tree, and it's going to be accurate to the DNA. But in my case, after I found out, I had a different biological father, and I learned all these things, I applied it myself. I applied the sourcing and triangulation. Well, I did all my sourcing, and on my sourcing, I found out that my tree was 100% accurate. But then when I got to that last step, that DNA triangulation, I found out that my mother had a different father. So again, don't worry about the accuracy of your tree right now. Let's build it out, use the through lines. It's a working dirty tree. And I'm going to show you that even with the sourcing, then you can find that this isn't necessarily, it'll be accurate to your paper trail, and it'll be accurate enough to join SAR and DAR, SAR at DIR, Sons of American Revolution, DAR's American Revolution. But when you put that DNA triangulation on it, that last step, you're going to flesh out things. I promise you that. Hopefully, not too many of you will, but again, this 4-part series, this is the real deal here. And you're it's kind of like when you took that DNA test and it says warning, unexpected results ahead. By the time you finish this 4-part series, I really want to make sure that you have the big warning. There could be some changes in your tree in ways you weren't expecting. I know it was in mine. 75% of my tree that I'd worked on for 30 years and made it pristinely sourced was cut and replaced. So just bear that in mind, that you could find some things like that down the road. I want to say thank you to Terry Deskins for joining us at Patreon and supporting us. If you haven't, take some time and go over to Patreon and support us there. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, you might want to do that. I'll put the links to both of those down below. And I want to say thank you to the Facebook group, especially to those of you who have helped me do some beta testing on process. Hopefully, I think I'm going to be able to get a video out on that early next week, if not the week after, but that will really help people. I've gotten some really great feedback on it so far, and I don't want to keep that to myself. If it's giving people that much success that quickly, we definitely want to get that out. And then, of course, don't forget part 3 and part 4 of this series will be coming out soon for Harold, and then we'll follow that up with doing another one on the tree portion, on how to begin building that tree if maybe you're adopted or you don't have any information. You've got your DNA matches and they've got trees but you don't know what to do. And it's a lot like this one, you know, where you're looking for those similarities, but there are a few different things that you can do. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Click the bell notification. That's the best way to find out when the next video comes up. So as soon as I release a video, it sends you an email and you'll know immediately. And as always, I appreciate you all. Thank you, and you guys have a great weekend.